The November rain fell like quiet grief, each drop tapping against the slate headstones as if trying to wake the dead. The cemetery, usually empty at dawn, stirred with a heavy wind that bent the thin trees and soaked the earth until it smelled like raw, exposed truth. Eleanor Harwood stepped out of her town car, her heels sinking into the wet ground. At 61, the billionaire matriarch moved with a stiffness that came from too many years of power and too few years of rest. She held a bouquet of crimson roses, her late son Roland's favorite, wrapped in black silk. She had vowed today would be quiet, private, a brief moment away from boardrooms and headlines and the empire that bore her family name. It had been exactly 4 years since Roland died, leaving her inheritance with no heir. For years, since the world stopped making sense. But as she approached the marble headstone, something impossible, unacceptable, stopped her dead in her tracks. A young black woman knelt in front of Roland's grave, soaked through by the rain, a café apron still tied around her waist. In her arms clung a little boy, maybe 4 or 5, trembling as he cried into her shoulder. The woman whispered something into his hair, her tears mixing with the rain. Eleanor stiffened, gripping the roses so tightly that thorns cut into her glove. Who were they? Why were they touching her son's grave? And why, good God, why, did the child of Roland's unmistakable eyes? A cold, electric sensation crawled up her spine. Those eyes, those deep, storm-gray eyes. Her son's eyes. Excuse me. Eleanor's voice sliced through the rain. Sharp, controlled, cold. This is private property, and you are standing at my son's grave. The woman startled, clutching the boy closer as she slowly rose to her feet. Her gaze met Eleanor's, wary, exhausted, but proud. I didn't know anyone would be here this early, she said softly. Her voice carried a tremble, but also dignity. I'm sorry if we disturbed you. Eleanor's breath caught. The boy looked up, and those eyes, Roland's impossible eyes, held her still. Who are you? Eleanor demanded. And why are you here? The woman took a breath, tightened her grip on the trembling child, and answered. My name is Lila Warren, and this is Nate. She hesitated. We're here because Roland meant something to us. The roses slid from Eleanor's hand, scattering across the wet ground. Her heart, for the first time in years, cracked open in terror, because she understood instantly whatever this woman was about to tell her. It would destroy everything she thought she knew about her son. Eleanor steadied herself, planting her cane into the soft ground. Explain, she ordered, more sharply than she intended. Lila swallowed hard. Nate peeked shyly from behind her, clutching a toy car in one hand. I worked at a diner downtown, Lila began. 4 years ago, Roland used to come in late at night after his shifts at the shelter. He was quiet, kind. He never talked about his family. Not once. Eleanor's jaw clenched. Roland had always been too soft, too gentle, too selfless. Traits she had spent years trying to correct. He and I became close, Lila continued carefully. Not in the way you're thinking. We were friends first. Really good friends. But you're implying he fathered your child. Eleanor snapped. Lila looked directly at her. No, that's not what I'm saying. Eleanor blinked. Then why does that boy look exactly like my son? Lila looked down at Nate, brushing rain from his forehead. Because Roland raised him. Not biologically, but emotionally. He was Nate's godfather. He treated him like his own. Eleanor felt her pulse throttle in her ears. Where's the boy's father? She demanded. Lila's expression shifted. Not anger, not shame, but something devastatingly weary. Dead, she murmured. Nate's father died when Nate was just a few months old. Roland stepped in when nobody else would. A gust of wind whipped a strand of wet hair across Eleanor's face, but she didn't move. Couldn't. The earth beneath her seemed to tilt. Roland had helped raise a child he never told her about, a child he hid from her. Roland spent the last year of his life worrying about Nate's future, Lila said. He visited every week, brought food, paid bills when he thought I wasn't looking. He even opened a savings account for Nate. Eleanor staggered back a step. Roland had been hiding an entire life from her. Why didn't he tell me? Lila's voice softened, carrying a tremor Eleanor did not miss. He tried, twice, but you canceled both meetings. Your assistant said you were too busy. The words hit harder than any physical blow. For a moment, Eleanor forgot how to breathe. The rain drenched her hair, her clothes, the roses on the ground, a soaked testament to everything she had failed to see. And why? Eleanor's voice cracked against her will. Why come today? Lila hesitated. Today is the anniversary of the accident. Nate asks about him every year. He wants to bring him a drawing. Nate shyly lifted a folded paper from his pocket, holding it up to Eleanor. A crayon sketch of him holding Roland's hand. Eleanor felt her throat close. She looked at the little boy, this child her son loved, this child he had protected, and something ancient and buried stirred in her chest. A longing she hadn't allowed herself since Roland died. A second chance. But then Lila stepped protectively in front of Nate, as if shielding him. And Eleanor understood. Lila was afraid of her. 24 hours later, Eleanor summoned Lila to her penthouse office, a sweeping glass palace overlooking the city, designed to intimidate. Lila arrived wearing a simple pressed blouse and black slacks. Her hair was tied back. She stood tall despite the obvious nerves tightening her shoulders. Sit, Eleanor said. I prefer to stand. They regarded each other like two strategists on opposing sides of a battlefield. I want custody of Nathaniel, Eleanor said bluntly. Lila flinched. You want to take him from me? I want to give him everything Roland would have wanted. Education, security, a future, things you can't provide. Lila's jaw tightened. I provide love, she said quietly, and stability, and a home. Yes, a small rented apartment above a laundromat, Eleanor countered. You work 2 minimum wage jobs. You can barely afford daycare. Lila's eyes burned, but she stayed silent. Eleanor reached into her desk, sliding a check across the table. $200,000. Enough to change your life, Eleanor said. Enough for schooling. Enough to ensure Nate has what he deserves. In exchange, you relinquish primary guardianship to me. You can visit. Lila stared at the check as if it were a venomous snake. You're trying to buy my child, she whispered. I'm trying to save him, Eleanor corrected. Lila's hand shook, but her voice did not. Roland would never want Nate taken from me. You didn't give birth to him. No, Lila snapped. But I have raised him every day of his life. The room tensed like a hell breath. Ms. Harwood, Lila said, her voice now trembling with anger she could no longer contain. You think money makes you the only one capable of loving him. But you never once ask what Nate wants, or what Roland wanted. You only ask what you want. Eleanor felt the words like a blade between ribs. Take the deal, Eleanor said softly, before I take him without your consent. For the first time, fear flickered across Lila's face. But then something unexpected, something steely, replaced it. She tore the check clean in half. Do what you must, Lila said. But understand this. She stepped close enough for Eleanor to see the fire in her eyes. I'm not the helpless girl you think I am. 3 days later, Eleanor's attorney, Robert Kessler, a ruthless man known as the Wolf, called her in a panic. We have a problem, he said, sounding breathless. There shouldn't be, Eleanor growled. The custody filing is standard. Yes, but Lila Warren, she has representation. Who? A public defender. Kessler swallowed audibly. Rosenfield and Drake. Eleanor almost dropped her coffee. Rosenfield and Drake was the top civil rights firm on the East Coast. They specialized in multi-million-dollar discrimination lawsuits. They never lost. That's impossible, Eleanor snapped. She can't afford them. She didn't pay, Kessler said grimly. They took her case pro bono. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. Why would a top firm take a minimum wage waitress's custody case? Kessler hesitated. That's the second problem, he said. You're being investigated. For what? Abuse of power, coercion, possible discrimination. Someone filed a complaint citing a pattern of racially biased targeting and economic intimidation. Eleanor's mouth went dry. That's ridiculous. Kessler sighed. They have recordings. Recordings of what? He said, offering her money for her child. Eleanor froze. Someone had recorded the meeting. But who? Her office was locked. Secure. No hidden devices. Unless someone close to her had planted one. Someone watching. Someone waiting. Kessler lowered his voice. Eleanor, they also know about the offshore accounts. Her blood ran ice cold. What? The ones you used to hide Roland's philanthropic transfers. They think you were laundering funds. The IRS has requested documentation. Eleanor felt her pulse spike. Those accounts weren't criminal, just hidden to avoid public scrutiny. Roland had been funneling money to shelters anonymously. She had covered for him after he died. If investigators misinterpreted those transactions, she could lose everything, including custody. Kessler, she breathed, find out who is feeding Lila information. But she already knew the answer. Lila Warren was not acting alone, and someone with immense resources was standing behind her. That same night, in a shabby but meticulously clean apartment, Lila met with a small group seated around her kitchen table. Among them, Professor Geraldine Marks, legal ethics expert. Harvey Stone, award-winning investigative journalist. Dr. Samuel Brooks, a child psychologist. And at the head of the table, an elegant black woman in her late 60s, Margaret Warren, former federal judge. Nate slept peacefully in the next room. You handled Harwood well, Judge Warren said. She reacted exactly as predicted. Lila nodded, though her hands trembled from stress. I didn't expect her to escalate so fast. That's because she's used to steamrolling people, Harvey Stone said. But she doesn't know who she picked a fight with. Professor Marks tapped her pen. Once the discrimination complaint is formally filed, the courts will look unfavorably on any attempt by Harwood to seize custody. Judge Warren's eyes softened toward Lila. My daughter will be proud of you. Lila's breath hitched. Does Harwood suspect? Dr. Brooks asked. No, Lila said. She doesn't know who I really am yet. And when will you tell her? Judge Warren asked. Lila exhaled, steadying herself. When she has no weapons left. Harvey Stone spread papers on the table, photographs, bank statements, recordings. In 2 weeks, he said, the full expose on the Harwood Foundation goes live. Professor Marks nodded. And once the truth about Roland is revealed, Eleanor Harwood will lose all legal footing. Lila's eyes welled, not because she wanted revenge, but because she remembered Roland's last words to her, whispered in the hospital as he slipped away. If anything happens to me, promise me you won't let my mother take him. She had promised, and she would keep that promise, even if it meant dismantling one of the most powerful empires in the country. 2 weeks later, Eleanor awoke to a nightmare. Her name blasted across every news site. Harwood Foundation funneled millions through undeclared accounts. Beneath the headline were leaked documents, recordings, and photographs. Her private accounts, anonymous donations tied back to hidden transfers, emails she'd written years ago. The media framed it as financial misconduct. She knew the truth. Roland had been funding shelters secretly, but the world didn't. And whoever leaked this, they wanted her reputation obliterated. Her phone rang. It was Kessler. His voice was grave. Eleanor, the board is demanding your resignation. The IRS has frozen your accounts, and the custody petition has been dismissed. Eleanor felt her knees weaken. Dismissed? On what grounds? Unfit guardian, coercive behavior, interference in the parent-child bond, and discrimination. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Kessler, her voice cracked. Who is behind this? Who helped her? Kessler hesitated. It's someone you know. Who? He swallowed. Margaret Warren. The name hit like a punch. Retired federal judge. Civil rights icon. Untouchable. Lila's last name suddenly screamed significance. She's her mother? Eleanor whispered. No, Kessler corrected softly. Her grandmother. Lila's mother died years ago. Margaret raised her. And, Eleanor, this is going to hurt. You knew her. Eleanor's heart stuttered. What? You served with her on the Philanthropy Council for nearly a decade. Memory slammed into her. Margaret. Sharp. Brilliant. Strong-willed. A woman Eleanor had once openly disrespected, dismissing her proposals, mocking her reforms. And now she was destroying her, piece by piece. The next morning, Eleanor, pale, exhausted, stripped of all pretense, arrived at Lila's apartment building. She climbed the narrow stairs. No bodyguards, no lawyers, just a woman with shaking hands and a lifetime of regrets. She knocked. Lila opened the door slowly. Behind her, Judge Margaret Warren sat at the table, watching with unreadable eyes. Eleanor swallowed. May I come in? Lila hesitated, then stepped aside. Eleanor entered, her cane tapping against the worn floorboards. She faced Lila. This young woman her son had trusted more than his own mother. Why didn't he tell me about you? Eleanor whispered. Lila's eyes softened. He tried, she said, but every time he reached out, you canceled, or rescheduled, or sent money instead of showing up. The truth burned. Eleanor looked at the small room, humble but warm, lived in, safe. For the first time, she saw it not through judgment, but through Roland's eyes. Then she turned to Margaret. You orchestrated all of this. Margaret didn't flinch. No, she said calmly. You did. When you tried to intimidate a young mother with money and threats. When you dismissed her worth. You started a war you couldn't win. Eleanor looked down. I never wanted to hurt the boy, she said softly. I miss my son. Lila's voice trembled. So do I. Silence filled the room. Then Eleanor looked up, tears finally escaping. What happens now? Lila exchanged a look with Margaret. Then she spoke carefully. You will not seek custody. Ever. You will attend parenting workshops. You will write a formal statement clearing Roland of any financial wrongdoing. And if you want to be in Nate's life, she swallowed. You will start by earning it. Eleanor nodded slowly, brokenly, gratefully. I would like that, she whispered. The community center buzzed with children's laughter. Eleanor, hair now silver, eyes gentler, sat on a small folding chair as Nate ran up, waving a drawing. Gran, look, it's you and me and Mom and Roland. Eleanor's heart warmed. Lila approached, smiling. They stood side by side, no longer adversaries. Not quite family. Something in between. You're good with him, Lila said. I'm learning, Eleanor replied. Slowly, but I'm learning. Judge Margaret watched from across the room, arms crossed but eyes soft with hard-earned approval. Eleanor exhaled deeply. Her empire was gone. Her reputation shattered. Her wealth diminished. But every Saturday morning, she showed up, rain or shine, to read stories to Nate, help with crafts, or simply listen. And slowly, piece by piece, they built something new. Not out of obligation, not out of power, but out of choice, out of love. As Nate dragged them both toward the playground, Lila touched Eleanor's arm gently. For what it's worth, Roland will be proud of you. Eleanor swallowed a tear. I hope so. Life had rewritten itself, not through wealth, not through force, but through humility, through forgiveness, through a little boy with storm-gray eyes who reminded them all of the man they had lost and a future they could still build. And on quiet November mornings, in a cemetery on the East Hill, fresh flowers appeared on Roland Harwood's grave. 3 sets of footprints always led to the stone. A billionaire learning to love, a mother who never gave up, and a child who brought them both back to life.